Folks, it feels like, I don't know, what, 4 or 5 years ago, they were talking about adapting God of War into a live action series for Amazon Prime, and discussions regarding this topic kind of stalled since then. We spent years wondering who was going to play Kratos, and now we've got our guy. It's Ryan Hurst, who played Thor in God of War Ragnarok. Manny Patinkin from, well, I know him as Inigo Montoya from The Princess Bride is playing Odin. We've got our Thor, we've got our Heimdall. And now that things are kind of getting more serious, it looks like we're going into production here pretty soon. They haven't cast an Atreus or a Freya yet, but we do have Alistair Duncan coming back to play Mimir again, and we do have a Brock. No Sindri just yet. Now, you may notice, just based on the fact that I said the names Thor, Odin, and Heimdall, those are characters from God of War Ragnarok. Yes, they all existed during God of War 4, and probably the entire franchise, but we didn't meet any of them until we were playing God of War Ragnarok. Now, what does this mean for this show? Let's talk about that. But before we get whisked away into the Lake of Nine, if you are a fan of God of War like I am, leave a sub, leave a like, comment below which is your favorite game. I'm still partial to God of War 3. Now, the way that it looks like we're going to go with this show, because we're casting a Kratos with a massive beard. We don't know for sure he's going to have a beard in the show, but he probably will. And the fact that Mimir and all those characters are coming back, it doesn't seem like we're going to be focusing on Greece at all. It looks like we are skipping straight ahead to the Norse saga. Not specifically the Ragnarok-centric content, but the fact that Thor and Kratos were cast like back-to-back is a bit concerning because Thor has virtually zero presence in God of War 2018 and Odin has zero. We deal with Magni and Modi and Balder in God of War 2018, but not Thor. He's only there in a post-credit scene. So it seems like maybe they're going to smash together the narrative content of God of War 2018 and Ragnarok. Maybe they're filming 2 seasons of this. I don't know exactly what the plan is, but we're jumping pretty much straight to the ending of the timeline, which is concerning for a few reasons. First of all, assuming that the show comes out next year, it's only going to be 5 years after the content that it's adapting. You know, like, you look at movies like Iron Lung or like the upcoming Mortuary Assistant, it's like, yeah, those are adaptations of very recent games, but they're very small scale games with very small scale adaptations. This God of War show is probably going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars to produce, and God of War Ragnarok is one of the highest selling games of the decade so far. Like the highest selling games of the 2020s are like, you know, God of War Ragnarok, probably Spider-Man 2, Hogwarts Legacy, Baldur's Gate 3, Clair Obscur. You know, like, those are like the big games. Oh, Elden Ring, sorry. Those are like the big games this decade so far, right? So it's not exactly a low-profile game. I'm willing to bet that at least one out of every 3 PS5 owners probably has or has had a copy of God of War Ragnarok. So it's a game that is still like readily available for a lot of people to play. It's on PlayStation Plus, so it's not like it's exactly still full price or anything, but you look at a show like The Last of Us, which is also a very high profile game, very high profile show. There was at least, you know, there was 12 years that passed between that game coming out and the adaptation coming out. This is like really, really recent. You know, the Mario Galaxy movie is almost 20 years after Mario Galaxy came out for the Wii in 2007. I think that we're kind of rushing things, which is funny because we do have God of War material that is 20 years old if we go back to God of War 1, which is really what I want to talk about here. I think it's a huge disservice to God of War as a franchise and as a story, and to Kratos as a character, if we start with God of War Norse. Now, I'm not stupid. I've seen the numbers. God of War 4 and 5 are the highest selling games in the franchise. A lot of people started in Scandinavia, in Midgard. That's where a lot of people first came into the franchise. I get that. I'm not stupid, right? But here's the thing. We're in a world where 3-hour video essays are very common. And if you want that kind of thing on this channel, I won't say never, but I'm not editing that. So one of you guys is going to have to apply to be my editor, and then we'll talk about it. But, you know, you can watch all sorts of videos. You can watch 100 videos to get caught up on the lore of Greek God of War. Or you can watch those playthroughs, because the games are relatively short. You can watch somebody play 1, 2, 3, Chains of Olympus, Ghost of Sparta. And I know what you're thinking. Well, if you can do that to get caught up on the lore of the new game, why can't you just do that for the show? I need to put my phone on Do Not Disturb. I'll be right back. So as I was saying, if you can do all of that research for the new game, why can't you do it for the show? Well, that is a different proposition entirely. When you're doing research so that you understand the timeline of a game, so that you can play and understand the 9th game in the franchise, that's one thing. But to have to do it to understand this new beginning point, it's a whole other thing entirely. You know what I mean? It's kind of asinine to expect people to do so much research to understand the context of a brand new thing. An adaptation of a thing is meant to be a new jumping on point for people. Say, like, that's when you adapt a book or a comic book or anything. When you're adapting pre-existing IP into a new medium, the point is to bring in new eyes for the very first time. You're going to be getting people watching God of War that don't know anything about who Kratos is. There's a huge difference between the people that watch TV shows and the people that play video games. Yes, there's overlap, but it's still two very separate worlds, as evidenced by the fact that a show like Love is Blind can exist, and a game like Clair Obscur 33 can exist. Does that make any sense to you? They, you know, when the Iron Man movie came out back in 2008, did you necessarily have to go buy every major hit Iron Man comic to understand the movie? Or did the movie introduce you to a world and a version of Tony Stark that's very easy to digest by starting from the beginning? It shows you what happened to him, why he became Iron Man, how he became Iron Man, and why he's a hero. To start so deep into Kratos' story ignores so much context and so much groundwork and foundation that's laid by the Greek saga to even make the Norse saga interesting. And that's not to say that, like, I don't think they're going to show Greece at all. There have to be flashbacks, right? Because even when you look at Kratos and you see that he's got this big red swirling tattoo around his body, and he's got pale white skin, you have to explain that. Or maybe you don't. But you know what you understand from playing the Greek saga games? Where that comes from and why he looks like that. He has this tattoo because his brother Deimos had a birthmark that looked like that. It's part of a prophecy that Zeus was afraid of. He has ashen white skin because the ashes of his wife and daughter are cursed into his skin. This is stuff that you learn from playing the Greek games. The introspective and self-reflective, calm, you know, moderate version of Kratos that we meet in the Greek saga can only exist as juxtaposition to the angry, vengeful, vindictive, petty, bloodlusted version of Kratos that we get to know in the Greek saga. His philosophy about how there's no good gods and how all gods are evil, which includes himself, you have to lay the groundwork of that from Greece. When he unearths the blades of chaos from underneath his house so that he can go save his son, and he's haunted by memories of Athena mocking him, and he sees a vision of Zeus in hell. You need context for that stuff. Even the Norse games don't ignore what happened before. They talk about it at great length. And what are we gonna do in this show? Have a bunch of expositional dialogue for newcomers? Like, oh, we're gonna talk about the boat captain, and we're gonna talk about Calliope, and the Ambrosia, and we're gonna talk about Helios. Like, if you didn't play the Greek God of War saga, God of War Valhalla doesn't even make any sense. there are so many things that you're missing out on if we skip over Greece entirely. And not only that, PlayStation already has this reputation for being playable movies. These stories are already hugely cinematic, especially the Norse saga. You know, the delivery of the plot of God of War 2018 and Ragnarok is meant to emulate a movie or a TV show already. Why not go back to the beginning? If you still have this brand new stuff that's playable on modern hardware, because you can't really play the original God of War trilogy on modern hardware. Even to celebrate the 20th anniversary, they didn't give you the remaster or remake that had been teased or rumored for a while. It's just like, oh, here's the skin. Here's this new controller. And even the general plot of God of War, doesn't it help to establish why Kratos is so desperate to protect his new child? Because he failed to protect his first daughter and actually literally killed her? Wouldn't it be a more interesting story to show what happened in between God of War 3 and 4? I want to see how he got to Scandinavia. I want to see how he allowed himself to love again. I want to see how much time passed, how he learned to be so introspective. Because at the end of God of War 3, he causes the apocalypse. I want to know why the world is still spinning. I know there's comics. But this is stuff that the people that only play the games aren't even being able to see. But even if you've done the work, this is stuff that you still don't know. Why rehash stuff that we just saw? Content that's not even 10 years old yet. God of War 4 came out in 2018. 8 years ago. Not even a decade by the time this adaptation comes out. Why? There's so much left on the table. And we're just... I don't know, we're taking the easy way out, it seems like. It seems like we're going the path of least resistance, which is unfortunately the least interesting path on the table. I find it to be mind-boggling in a very unique and specific way, because, again, maybe I'm crazy. But is it not worth at least taking the first season to talk about Greece? You don't have to do a season for each game, right? Because that's technically 6 seasons. Nobody wants to do that. But what? I don't know. It's just like, I'm someone that's played God of War pretty much since it first started, and there's so much that happens, even at the very beginning of God of War 2018, that only really makes sense if you have that context. At the beginning, when he puts his hand on the handprint of the tree, and then he cuts the tree down, and he goes to reach, and the bandages on his forearm come loose, and he wraps it back up. You're like, yeah, that's where the burn scars from the chains on the Blades of Chaos are. If you don't know anything about Greek God of War, then yeah, when you see his scars at the end of the game, you're like, oh, those chains are probably connected to the Blades of Chaos. But it doesn't mean anything. I feel like we have a whole new audience here that we're trying to bring into the world of God of War, and we are intentionally leaving them in the dust. We're robbing them of so much potential and so much reward for sticking with the franchise for so long. But, you know, not to repeat myself too much, that's just the general basis of what I think about the adaptation of God of War. Like, potentially years before it comes out. You know, I could be completely jumping the gun here, and I would love to be proven wrong by this. I would love for the show to be good, and I would love for it to reward longtime fans, like the games have. But that's what I think about God of War. If you have thoughts about this upcoming show, please let me know what they are in the comments. I'd love to hear about it. And what's one fight from the God of War games, Greek or Norse, that you would love to see done in live action? Me, I think that Kratos fight could be really cool. That's just me. See you later.